A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Signs of Belonging. The needle pierced through linen with precision born from years of necessity rather than passion. Beatrix kept her stitches small and even, the emerald thread forming delicate leaves along the collar of what would become some merchant's wife prized possession. Her fingers moved without conscious thought, leaving her mind free to wander to places it should not go. To memories of laughter shared in secret, of small hands moving through air in patterns only two people understood. Moira had been gone for 13 years now, but some mornings Beatrix still woke expecting to see her younger sister curled beside her, dark hair spilling across the pillow they once shared. The ache never quite faded, though she had learned to carry it the way one carries old scars, present but no longer bleeding. The cottage felt too large for one person. It had felt that way since the rogue attack took her parents when she was 15, leaving her and 10-year-old Moira to fend for themselves among a pack that valued strength above all else. The pack had tolerated them then, barely, because their father had been a capable tracker before his death. After Moira succumbed to fever 2 years later, tolerance turned to disdain. An Omega without family was worthless in their eyes. An Omega who refused the attentions of the Alpha's son was worse than worthless. She was a liability. Beatrix set aside the finished collar and reached for another piece of fabric, this one destined to become a decorative square for the festival market. The annual celebration at the royal castle drew merchants and craftspeople from every corner of the kingdom, all hoping to catch the eye of wealthy nobles with coin to spare. She had been saving for months to afford the merchant tax required to set up a stall, selling 2 pieces for every 3 she made just to gather the silver needed. Old Marin from the village edge had helped her, purchasing handkerchiefs and pillowcases even when her own were barely worn. The elderly woman never said much, but her eyes held understanding that Beatrix treasured. Then there was Willem, the baker's apprentice who sometimes left day-old bread on her doorstep when his master was not looking, and Cora, the healer's daughter who had been Moira's only friend outside their home. These 3 had kept Beatrix from complete isolation, small kindnesses that meant more than they likely realized. Tomorrow she would leave before dawn, joining the caravan of villagers making the 2-day journey to the capital. The Alpha's son, Garrett, had made it clear he expected her to reconsider his suit before she departed. His idea of courtship involved cornering her in empty streets and describing in explicit detail what he would do once she stopped being difficult. She had no intention of reconsidering anything. The festival represented escape, even if only for a handful of days. The sun dipped low, painting her small workspace in amber and shadow. Beatrix lit a candle and continued working, determined to finish 3 more pieces before sleeping. The festival began in 3 days. She would be ready. The royal castle rose from the mountainside as if the stone itself had decided to reach for the sky. Beatrix had never seen anything so massive, so deliberately imposing. The outer walls alone could contain her entire village twice over, and the towers seemed to pierce the clouds. Pennants bearing the royal crest snapped in the mountain wind, the silver wolf on black silk visible for miles. The market sprawled across the lower courtyard, a organized chaos of color and noise. Merchants called out their wares while nobles drifted between stalls with practiced disinterest, their fine clothes marking them as clearly as any spoken word. Beatrix arranged her embroidered goods with careful attention, making sure each piece caught the light. Her stall sat wedged between a spice merchant and a potter, both of whom had barely acknowledged her presence beyond cursory nods. She was Omega. They could smell it on her, that indefinable something that marked her as lesser in their hierarchy. It did not matter that her needlework rivaled anything the noble ladies produced. It did not matter that she had survived alone for years in a pack that would have gladly seen her gone. She was Omega, and that single fact defined how the world treated her. The morning proved slow. A few nobles paused to examine her work, but most moved on without purchasing. One lady did buy a set of handkerchiefs, paying the asking price without haggling, which Beatrix counted as a small victory. By midday, her coin purse held barely more than when she started, and doubt began creeping in. Perhaps this had been foolish. Perhaps she should have stayed in the village, should have accepted Garrett's suit, and resigned herself to a life of misery with a roof over her head. No, that path led nowhere worth going. Beatrix was nibbling on cheese and hard bread when the commotion began. The crowd shifted, bodies turning toward the inner courtyard where the royal family apparently planned to make an appearance. She could not see much from her position, but the excited whispers told her what she needed to know. The Alpha King himself was coming out to greet his subjects, likely accompanied by his daughter. Everyone knew about Princess Elowen, the girl who could not hear, could not speak, a peculiarity that had scandalized the kingdom when it became apparent. Some called it divine punishment for past sins. Others whispered darker theories involving curses and fairy meddling. The queen had died shortly after Elowen's birth 6 years ago, leaving the Alpha King to raise his unusual daughter alone. Beatrix felt an unexpected kinship with a child she had never met. Curiosity drew her from her stall. The spice merchant was too engrossed in counting his morning earnings to notice her absence, and the potter had disappeared entirely, likely to watch the royal procession himself. She slipped through the crowd with the ease of someone accustomed to being overlooked, finding spaces between bodies that others missed. The inner courtyard opened before her, a wide stone expanse where the king stood surrounded by advisors and guards. He was tall, powerfully built in the way of alphas, who fought their way to dominance rather than inheriting it through blood alone. Fair hair fell to his shoulders, darker than true gold, but lighter than pure brown, and a well-kept beard framed a strong jaw. Even from a distance, Beatrix could feel the weight of his presence, the natural authority that made others instinctively defer. But it was the small figure beside him that captured her attention completely. Elowen looked tiny next to her father, a wisp of a girl with pale blonde hair and a blue dress that probably cost more than Beatrix earned in a year. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped before her, face carefully blank. Around her swirled a dozen noblewomen, all vying for the king's attention by cooing over his daughter with transparent insincerity. "Such a beautiful child, your majesty. She has your eyes, sire. A true princess in every way." The words washed over Elowen without impact. She could not hear them. And even if she could, Beatrix suspected the girl would recognize the falseness beneath the flattery. No one actually looked at the princess. They looked past her, through her, treating her presence as an obstacle to overcome rather than a person to engage. Elowen's small hands twitched. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but Beatrix recognized the gesture instantly. Frustration. The girl was trying to communicate something and being completely ignored. One hand lifted slightly, fingers forming a shape that Beatrix knew in her bones even though the specific meaning was unclear. It was too far away, the angle wrong, but the intent was unmistakable. Elowen was signing. Without conscious decision, Beatrix's own hands moved. The signs she and Moira had created together were probably different from whatever system Elowen used, but the basic concepts remained universal. She signed hello in the way Moira had taught her. A simple gesture that meant acknowledgement, recognition. "I see you." Elowen's head snapped around. Those blue eyes, so like her father's, locked onto Beatrix with startling intensity. For a heartbeat, nothing else existed. Just two people connected by the simplest of signs. Then, Elowen's face transformed. The careful blankness shattered, replaced by wonder and desperate hope. Her hands flew up, forming shapes rapidly, questions tumbling out too fast for Beatrix to follow. The Alpha King noticed. Of course he did. Alphas noticed everything, especially when it concerned their children. His gaze tracked from his daughter to Beatrix, those ice-blue eyes assessing her with predatory focus. The crowd around them seemed to fade, sound muffled as if they stood in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. Beatrix forced herself to breathe. She had the Alpha King's attention, and that could be either salvation or destruction, depending on how she handled it. Elowen tugged on her father's sleeve, signing frantically. Constantine. She knew his name was Constantine Shadowmere, Alpha King of the Mountain Territories, bent down to his daughter's level. He signed back. The gestures were simpler than Elowen's, more basic, but functional. He understood his daughter's language even if he was not fluent. Then he straightened and looked directly at Beatrix again. He said something to his guards, words she could not hear across the distance, and two of them began moving through the crowd toward her. Panic fluttered in her chest, but running would only make things worse. She stood her ground, chin lifted, as the guards reached her position. "The king requests your presence," one said, not unkindly. She followed them across the courtyard, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. Who was this common-looking woman being summoned by royalty? The whispers started immediately, speculation spreading like wildfire. By tonight, half the castle would have invented elaborate stories about her identity and purpose. Up close, Constantine Shadowmere was even more imposing. He towered over her by nearly a foot, and the breadth of his shoulders seemed to block out the sun. But it was his scent that nearly undid her. Pine and snow, and something wild that spoke to the wolf she carried inside. The beast that had never been strong but existed nonetheless. Alphas always smelled of dominance and power. This one smelled of winter storms and unshakable strength. "You know sign language," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "My sister was deaf. We created our own signs to communicate." "Your sister?" Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. "She is not with you?" "She died, 12 years ago now." Elowen made a sound, a small wounded noise that conveyed sympathy without words. Her hands moved again, and this time Beatrix was close enough to understand most of it. The signs were different from hers and Moira's, but the meaning came through. "I'm sorry. It's hard when they leave." Beatrix signed back, a simple gesture of acknowledgement and shared grief. Elowen's entire face lit up. Constantine watched this exchange with an expression that Beatrix could not quite read. Then he spoke, and his words changed everything. "I have a proposition for you. My daughter needs someone who can truly communicate with her, someone who understands what it means to live in silence. I am offering you a position in the royal household as Elowen's companion and tutor. You would teach her to expand her sign language, and perhaps teach others in the castle as well, so she is not so isolated." Beatrix stared at him. This could not be real. Things like this did not happen to Omegas from border villages, to women with no family and no prospects. "Your Majesty, I am honored, but I am not qualified. I have no formal training, no experience with children beyond my sister, and I am merely a seamstress. My daughter has had qualified tutors," Constantine said, and there was an edge to his voice now. "She has had the finest educators the kingdom can provide, and every single one of them treated her as a problem to be solved rather than a child to be understood. In 5 minutes you gave her more genuine connection than she has experienced in weeks. That is the only qualification I require." Elowen was watching her with those hopeful eyes, small hands clasped together as if in prayer. This child who had everything material wealth could provide, but nothing that truly mattered. This child who was lonely in a castle full of people. Beatrix had been that child once, in a different way. "When would you need me to start?" she heard herself ask. Constantine's expression shifted, something that might have been relief crossing his features. "Immediately. I will have servants collect your belongings from wherever you are staying and arrange for appropriate quarters in the castle. You will, of course, be compensated generously." It was happening too fast. Her mind raced, trying to catalog everything this decision would mean. Leaving the village permanently. Never seeing Marin or Willem or Cora again. Abandoning the small cottage that held every memory of her family. But also, never seeing Garrett again. Never feeling the pack's disdain. Never struggling to afford basic necessities. And this girl needed her. "I accept, Your Majesty." Elowen launched herself forward, wrapping small arms around Beatrix's waist in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked her backwards. The crowd gasped. Princesses did not embrace commoners in public, but Constantine merely smiled, a real smile that transformed his harsh features into something almost gentle. "Welcome to the royal household," he said. Chapter 2. Whispers and Walls. The servants' quarters occupied the eastern wing of the castle, a labyrinth of narrow corridors and modest chambers that housed everyone from ladies' maids to tutors. Beatrix's room sat at the far end of the 3rd floor, small but undeniably better than anything she had known before. A proper bed with clean linens, a writing desk beneath a window that overlooked the training grounds, and a wardrobe that could hold 10 times the clothing she actually possessed. She stood in the doorway, taking it all in with a strange sense of disconnection. 3 days ago, she had been sleeping in a cottage with a leaking roof. wondering how she would afford winter firewood. Now she lived in a castle, employed by royalty, with more security than she had ever known. The cost of that security became apparent within hours. An Omega. The voice dripped with disdain. Beatrix turned to find an older man in expensive robes standing in the corridor, his sharp features twisted in disapproval. His scent marked him as beta, powerful, but not quite dominant. His Majesty has truly lost all sense of propriety, bringing your kind into proximity with the princess. Counselor Godwin, I presume. Beatrix kept her tone neutral, though her wolf bristled at the naked hostility. She had dealt with men like this her entire life. They were all the same, convinced that hierarchy determined worth. You presume correctly. He stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over her. It was a dominance display, crude but effective on most Omegas. I want you to understand something very clearly. The king may have been charmed by whatever act you performed at the festival, but I see through it. You are a nobody from nowhere, and the moment you prove yourself unworthy of this position, I will personally ensure your removal. Then I shall endeavor to prove myself worthy. Beatrix met his gaze without flinching. Will there be anything else, counselor? His jaw tightened. He had expected submission, fear, perhaps even tears. Her calm refusal to be cowed clearly irritated him. We shall see how long your insolence lasts. He swept away, robes billowing dramatically. Beatrix closed her door and leaned against it, releasing a slow breath. This would not be easy. The first week proved her right. Godwin was not her only problem. The courtesans who constantly circled Constantine, hoping to catch his eye and become the next queen, viewed Beatrix as unwanted competition. Never mind that she was Omega, and therefore completely unsuitable for such a position. Never mind that Constantine had shown zero romantic interest in her. The simple fact that she had daily access to him through Elowen made her a threat in their eyes. They whispered when she passed, loud enough to be heard, quiet enough to maintain deniability. I heard she bewitched the princess somehow, probably slipped something in the child's food. My mother knew a hedge witch who could make potions that created false affection. How else would an Omega secure such a position? She must have used unnatural means. Beatrix ignored them all. She had a job to do, and Elowen deserved her full attention. The princess was brilliant. That became clear within days. Whatever prevented her from hearing and speaking had not touched her mind, which was sharp and endlessly curious. She learned new signs with remarkable speed, her small hands forming shapes that grew more complex each day. More importantly, she was finally able to express the thoughts and feelings that had been trapped inside her for 6 years. They sat together in Elowen's chambers, a bright suite of rooms decorated in soft blues and creams. Beatrix had created a new sign, combining one of Moira's gestures with one from Elowen's existing vocabulary. The meaning, happy surprise. The feeling of unexpected joy. Elowen practiced it repeatedly, then signed a question. Can we make signs for all the feelings? We can make signs for anything you want. Beatrix signed back. Feelings, ideas, dreams. Your language can be as big as you need it to be. The girl's face glowed with delight. She launched into a rapid series of signs, describing a dream she had the previous night involving flying horses and chocolate rain. Beatrix followed along, occasionally asking for clarification, but mostly just witnessing Elowen's personality finally given room to bloom. A throat cleared from the doorway. Constantine stood there, still wearing his training leathers from the morning exercises. Sweat darkened his hair at the temples, and a new bruise colored his left cheekbone. He must have been sparring with the guards again. Beatrix tried very hard not to notice how the leather molded to his frame, or how his scent intensified in the enclosed space, turning from winter pine to something warmer and more immediate. Your Majesty. She rose quickly, inclining her head. Please do not let me interrupt. He entered the room with that unconscious authority that made everyone instinctively give way. I was hoping to observe the lesson, if you do not mind. Of course not, Your Majesty. Elowen was just telling me about her dream. Constantine settled into a chair near the window, somehow making the delicate furniture seem sturdy, simply by occupying it. His attention focused entirely on his daughter, and Beatrix saw something in his expression that made her throat tighten. Love, pure and uncomplicated. This fearsome alpha king who commanded thousands of wolves through sheer dominance became soft when looking at his child. Elawan, realizing her father was watching, immediately began showing off. She signed the story again, more dramatically this time, adding flourishes and exaggerated expressions that made Beatrix smile. Constantine clearly understood some of it, but not all. His sign vocabulary remained basic despite obvious effort to learn. She says the horses were purple and gold, Beatrix translated, and they could speak, but only in rhymes. Rhyming horses. Constantine's lips twitched. That sounds complicated. She says it was very complicated, and one horse got frustrated and started stomping, which made the chocolate rain turn into chocolate puddles. Father and daughter shared a grin, so similar despite their age difference. Then Elawan signed something that made Beatrix hesitate. What did she say? Constantine asked, noting the pause. She asked if you could learn to sign better so she could tell you stories without needing me to translate. Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. Tell her I am trying, but I am not as clever as she is. Some things take me longer to learn. Beatrix translated. Elawan's response was immediate and emphatic. She says you are very clever, and she will help teach you if I teach her the signs first. That seems fair. Constantine stood, and the room suddenly felt smaller. He crossed to where they sat, kneeling down to Elawan's level. His hands moved slowly, forming signs that were simple but heartfelt. I love you. You make me proud. Elawan threw herself into his arms, a tangle of small limbs and blonde hair. Constantine held her gently, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. When he looked up, his gaze met Beatrix's, and for a heartbeat the world narrowed to just that connection. Those blue-gray eyes held something she could not name, something that made her pulse quicken and her wolf stir restlessly. Then he straightened, breaking the moment. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me back my daughter. Your Majesty, I have done very little. Elawan's intelligence and spirit were always there. Perhaps. But she had no way to share them before you arrived. He paused, as if weighing his next words. I wonder if you might join me for tea tomorrow afternoon. There are some matters regarding Elawan's education I wish to discuss. It was a reasonable request. Perfectly appropriate. Yet something in his tone suggested those matters were not the only reason for the invitation. Of course, Your Majesty. I would be honored. He left shortly after, taking his distracting scent with him. Beatrix released a breath she had not realized she was holding. The next afternoon brought the test Godwin had apparently been planning. Beatrix arrived for tea with Constantine, only to find the king's private study filled with people. 2 alphas from smaller packs, both bristling with aggression, stood on opposite sides of the room while their respective betas hovered nearby. Godwin lurked near the desk, wearing an expression of false concern. Ah, Miss Beatrix. Constantine's tone was carefully neutral, but she caught the warning in his eyes. I apologize for the change in plans. It seems we have a dispute that requires immediate attention, and Counselor Godwin suggested you might be able to assist. It was a trap. That much was obvious. Godwin wanted to see her fail publicly, to prove she was unsuitable for her position. The 2 alphas barely glanced at her, their attention fixed on each other with predatory intensity. The Redwood pack has been hunting in Ironwood territory, one alpha growled. He was shorter than his opponent, but broader, with scars marking his hands and face. They killed 3 elk that belong to us by right. Your territory boundary is unclear, the other alpha shot back. He was younger, leaner, with nervous energy that suggested inexperience. The river moved after the spring floods. We hunted where we always hunt. The boundary has not changed in 50 years. Then perhaps it should change. Your pack is smaller now. You cannot use all that land. The temperature in the room dropped as both alphas began releasing dominance pheromones, trying to intimidate each other. Beatrix felt the pressure of it, that weight that made omegas want to curl up and submit. She pushed back against the instinct, keeping her spine straight. Your Majesty, she said clearly, may I speak with both alphas privately? Godwin scoffed. Privately? This is meant to be a mediation, not a secret negotiation. Nevertheless, Constantine's voice cut through the tension. "I am curious to see Miss Beatrix's approach. Gentlemen, please accompany her to the adjacent room. You have 15 minutes. The alphas looked skeptical, but obeyed their king. Beatrix led them into a smaller chamber, closing the door behind them. Immediately both began posturing again, trying to establish dominance over each other and over her. "Stop," she said quietly. Both alphas paused, surprised by her tone. "You are both behaving foolishly, and you know it. This dispute is not about elk or territory. It is about pride. You dare!" The older alpha stepped forward threateningly. "Yes, I dare. Because someone needs to say what everyone is thinking." Beatrix held her ground. "Alpha Redwood, your pack is indeed smaller than it once was. That must be difficult to accept. And Alpha Ironwood, you are young and eager to prove yourself. Also understandable. But this path leads to violence that will weaken both your packs and disappoint your king." She moved to the window, giving them space to process. The river did move. That is fact. So the boundary must be redrawn. But Alpha Redwood deserves compensation for the 3 elk, and Alpha Ironwood deserves acknowledgement that he was operating in good faith based on natural landmarks. "What do you propose?" Ironwood asked grudgingly. "A joint hunt. Both packs together, on the disputed territory. Whatever you bring down gets divided evenly. You work together instead of against each other, and you establish a new boundary that both agree upon while cooperating." The 2 alphas stared at her. Then slowly, grudgingly, they looked at each other. "That could work," Redwood admitted. "My pack would agree to it," Ironwood added. They emerged from the room 12 minutes later with the basic framework of an agreement. Godwin's face had gone pale, then red, then carefully blank. Constantine, however, was smiling. "Well done," he said once the alphas had departed. "Counselor Godwin, was there anything else you needed Miss Beatrix to prove?" "No, Your Majesty." Godwin's tone could have frozen water. "I believe I have seen what I needed to see." He left stiffly. Beatrix waited until the door closed before allowing herself to sag slightly, the tension draining out of her. "That was a setup," she said. "Yes." Constantine poured tea with steady hands, passing her a cup. "Godwin believes you are here under false pretenses. He thinks you manipulated your way into this position. And what do you believe, Your Majesty?" He studied her over the rim of his cup. "I believe you are exactly who you appear to be. Someone kind and capable who cares about my daughter. Someone who sees past rank and title to the actual problems that need solving. Someone who makes me question things I thought were settled long ago." The air between them thickened, charged with something unspoken. Beatrix's wolf stirred, responding to the subtle shift in Constantine's scent. It had turned darker, richer, carrying notes that spoke directly to instincts she usually kept buried. "Your Majesty," she began, not sure what she meant to say. "Constantine," he interrupted softly. "When we are private, please call me Constantine. That would be inappropriate." "Perhaps." He set down his cup and stood, crossing to where she sat. "But there are many inappropriate things I find myself thinking lately. Do you know what it is to want something you should not have, Beatrix?" She looked up at him, heart racing. "Yes, I know that very well." His hand lifted, almost touching her face, then dropped. "My daughter adores you. In 3 weeks you have given her more happiness than she has known in years. I am grateful beyond measure." "You already thanked me, Your Majesty." "Constantine," he corrected, "and I find one thanks insufficient." His voice dropped to something intimate and rough. "You have given me back my daughter. That is a debt I can never truly repay." The moment stretched between them, weighted with possibilities neither could acknowledge. Then Constantine stepped back, his expression carefully neutral once more. "You should return to Elowen. She will be wondering where you are." Beatrix stood on unsteady legs. "Of course. Thank you for the tea." She fled before she could do something monumentally stupid, her wolf whining at the retreat. Behind her, she heard Constantine release a long, controlled breath. In the hallway, she pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart pound against her palm. This was dangerous. This was impossible. This was the Alpha King, and she was Omega. Nothing could come of the tension building between them. But knowing that, and believing it, were two entirely different things. Chapter 3. Threads of Longing. 3 months transformed everything and nothing at all. Elowen bloomed under Beatrix's patient guidance, her sign vocabulary expanding daily until conversations flowed with the ease of any spoken language. More remarkably, she had begun making sounds. Not words yet, just small vocalizations that suggested her voice existed somewhere beneath the silence. Beatrix encouraged each attempt without pressure, celebrating every hum and sigh as the victory it represented. The castle had become familiar in ways Beatrix never anticipated. She knew which corridors caught the afternoon sun, which servants could be trusted with secrets, and which courtesans would smile to her face while whispering poison behind her back. She had her own rhythm here, her own small place in the enormous machinery of royal life. What had not become familiar was the way her heart stuttered every time Constantine entered a room. "You are spending too much time in your own head," Elowen signed during their morning lesson. The girl had become remarkably perceptive, reading Beatrix's moods with unsettling accuracy. "I am focused on our lesson," Beatrix signed back, though the lie felt transparent. Elowen's expression turned mischievous. "You are thinking about father." "I most certainly am not. You make a face when you think about him. Like this." Elowen scrunched her features into an exaggerated mask of longing that would have been hilarious if it were not so accurate. "That is not my face." "It is exactly your face." Elowen giggled, the sound breathy but genuine. She had been laughing more lately, small bursts of joy that made Beatrix's chest ache with affection. The door opened without warning. Constantine stood there dressed for court in dark velvet and silver embroidery, looking every inch the powerful Alpha King. His gaze found Beatrix immediately, and something heated flickered in those blue-gray depths before he shuddered it away. "Ladies," he greeted. "I hope I am not interrupting." "Never, father." Elowen signed, then vocalized the word carefully. There. Constantine's expression transformed, pride and wonder mixing with something close to tears. He crossed to his daughter in 3 long strides, kneeling to pull her into an embrace. "That was perfect, little one." Beatrix watched them together, her throat tight. This was what she had wanted. This connection between father and daughter. The fact that it made her feel increasingly like an outsider looking in was her own problem to manage. "I came to ask a favor," Constantine said, straightening but keeping one hand on Elowen's shoulder. His attention shifted fully to Beatrix, and the air seemed to thicken. "There is a formal dinner tonight with several regional alphas. I would like Elowen to attend, which means I need you there as well to interpret for her." It was not the first time he had made such a request. Over the past month, Beatrix had attended 3 dinners, 2 council meetings, and 1 excruciating musical performance, where Lady Cordelia had sung directly at Constantine while shooting venomous glances at Beatrix. "Of course, Your Majesty." "Constantine," he corrected quietly. They had been over this. In private, he insisted on his name. Beatrix complied, though using it felt dangerously intimate. "Constantine," she amended, and watched satisfaction flash across his features. "Wear something appropriate for formal court. I will send a dress to your chambers." "That is not necessary." Nevertheless, his tone brooked no argument. "I want you properly attired." There was something possessive in the way he said it, something that made Beatrix's wolf perk up with interest. She forced the reaction down, maintaining her composure. "As you wish." He lingered a moment longer, gaze holding hers with intensity that bordered on improper. Then he tore himself away, leaving the room with that predatory grace she had come to associate with him. "You do make that face." Elowen signed gleefully once her father was gone. Beatrix threw a cushion at her. The dress Constantine sent was far too fine. Deep green silk that brought out her eyes, with delicate silver embroidery along the bodice and sleeves. It fit perfectly, which meant he had been paying attention to her measurements. The thought made her skin flush with warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. She braided her dark hair in a crown around her head, keeping it severe and practical, despite the elegance of the gown. When she looked in the polished silver mirror, a stranger stared back. Not quite a lady, but no longer a simple seamstress either. Something in between, undefined and uncertain. The formal dining hall glittered with candlelight and wealth. Long tables arranged in a U-shape accommodated perhaps 40 guests, all dressed in their finest. Beatrix recognized several faces from previous gatherings, including Godwin, who watched her entrance with barely concealed hostility. Constantine sat at the head table, commanding attention without effort. When he saw her, something flashed in his expression, gone too quickly to name but leaving heat in its wake. He rose, a courtesy that made everyone else scramble to their feet as well. "Miss Beatrix, please join us at the high table with Princess Alawan." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. The high table was reserved for royalty and the most honored guests. Seating in Omega there was unprecedented, borderline scandalous. Beatrix felt every eye on her as she made her way to the raised platform where Constantine and Elowin waited. She took the seat between father and daughter, hyper-aware of Constantine's proximity. His scent wrapped around her, pine and winter, and something uniquely him that made her wolf whine with want. This was torture of the sweetest kind. Dinner progressed with multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. Elowin signed questions about the various dishes, and Beatrix answered quietly, conscious of the attention focused on them. Constantine interjected occasionally, adding details or asking his own questions, creating an intimate bubble of conversation that excluded everyone else. "The princess seems quite attached to her companion," one alpha observed from down the table. His tone suggested disapproval. "My daughter has excellent judgment," Constantine replied coolly. "She recognizes quality when she sees it." The alpha subsided, chastened. No one contradicted the king. Lady Cordelia, seated near Godwin, leaned forward with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Your Majesty, have you given more thought to the proposal from the Northern Territories? I hear their alpha has a daughter of marriageable age." "I have not," Constantine said flatly. "Surely you must consider remarriage eventually," another noble added. "The kingdom needs stability, a queen, perhaps more heirs." Beatrix kept her face carefully neutral, though each word landed like a blow. Of course Constantine would remarry eventually. He needed political alliances, needed sons to secure his line. She was a temporary presence in his life, useful only as long as Elowin required her services. "When I remarry," Constantine said, his voice carrying dangerous edges, "it will be for reasons that satisfy me, not the kingdom's gossiping nobility. Is that understood?" Silence fell. Then someone cleared their throat and changed the subject to hunting prospects for the coming season. Crisis averted. But the tension remained. Beatrix focused on her food, forcing down bites that tasted like ash. The delegation arrived 2 days later with little warning. 20 soldiers bearing the crest of the eastern reaches, led by an alpha whose scent spoke of age and cunning. With them came a woman who could only be Lady Verity, dressed in crimson silk that displayed her considerable assets to maximum advantage. She was beautiful in the way court ladies were beautiful, calculated perfection from her golden hair to her practiced smile. Everything about her screamed suitable match for an alpha king. Beatrix watched from a window as they arrived, Elowin pressed against her side. The girl had gone rigid, small hands clenched into fists. "What is wrong?" Beatrix signed. "I do not like her," Elowin signed back. "She smells wrong. You cannot smell her from here." "I know anyway." Children had instincts adults learned to ignore. Beatrix filed away Elowin's reaction for future reference. The welcome banquet that evening was more elaborate than any Beatrix had yet attended. Lady Verity held court at Constantine's right hand, laughing at his comments and touching his arm with casual familiarity. She was doing everything correctly, playing the role of future queen with practiced ease. Beatrix sat beside Elowin at a lower table, having been firmly relegated from the high table to make room for their distinguished guests. She told herself it did not matter, that she had no right to feel this burning jealousy watching another woman claim Constantine's attention. "Miss Beatrix?" Lady Verity called down the table, her voice carrying crystal clear. "I understand you teach the princess some form of hand language?" "Yes, my lady. Sign language, so she can communicate." "How quaint." Verity's smile remained fixed. Though surely at her age, the princess should be learning more practical skills. Music, perhaps, or needlework, something befitting her station. Elawan is learning many skills, Beatrix replied evenly. Communication happens to be one of the most important. Of course. Of course. Verity turned to Elawan with exaggerated attention. And how are you, dear child? I hope you are not too overwhelmed by all this adult conversation. Elawan's hands moved rapidly. Beatrix caught the signs before the girl finished. Princess Elawan says she is quite capable of following adult conversation, and that you need not speak to her as if she were 3 years old. Beatrix's translation was diplomatic. What Elawan had actually signed was considerably ruder. Verity's smile tightened. How precious. She has spirit. My daughter has excellent instincts, Constantine interjected, his tone mild but his eyes sharp. She knows precisely who deserves her courtesy and who does not. The table went quiet. Verity's expression flickered with barely concealed anger before smoothing back into pleasant neutrality. Of course, Your Majesty. I meant no offense. None taken, Constantine said, though his gaze had shifted to Beatrix with something warm and approving that made her pulse race. The evening limped onward. Verity recovered her composure quickly, redirecting her charm toward Constantine with renewed determination. She spoke of alliances and trade routes, of the benefits their union would bring to both territories. She was making a compelling case, Beatrix had to admit. Everything she offered made logical sense. Everything except the fact that Constantine looked at her with polite disinterest, while he looked at Beatrix like he was starving, and she was sustenance itself. The messenger arrived during dessert, stumbling into the hall with blood soaking his tunic and terror marking his scent. He collapsed at the foot of the high table, gasping for breath. Your Majesty, he managed. Rogues. The border villages. They came at dawn, dozens of them. Coordinated attack. We could not hold them. Constantine was on his feet instantly. Which villages? Thornwood, Ashbrook, River's Bend. Beatrix's world tilted. River's Bend, her village, where Marin lived, where Willem worked, where Cora still tended the sick and injured. Send for Tavish, Constantine ordered, already moving. Ready the guard. We ride within the hour. Your Majesty, let me come with you. Alpha Verity's father stood. My men are fresh. We can provide additional support. Constantine barely glanced at him. Appreciated. Tavish will coordinate. His gaze found Beatrix across the chaos. Something passed between them, understanding and shared urgency. Beatrix, take Eloan to your chambers. Stay there until I return. She wanted to argue, wanted to beg to come with him, to see if anyone she knew had survived. But Elawan needed her, and Constantine needed to focus on the threat without worrying about their safety. Be careful, she said, the words inadequate. His jaw tightened. Always. Then he was gone, taking half the castle guard with him. The hall erupted into frightened speculation. Beatrix gathered Eloan close and fled to the relative safety of her chambers. They waited through the night. Eloan eventually fell asleep curled against Beatrix's side, but sleep eluded Beatrix entirely. She kept seeing Marin's weathered face, Willem's shy smile, Cora's steady hands. They were the only ones who had shown her kindness when the world turned cold. They were the closest thing to family she had left. If they were gone, she had nothing remaining of her old life. Nothing but painful memories and the graves of people she had loved. Dawn came gray and cheerless. Eloan woke, signing questions Beatrix could not answer. They sat together in silence, waiting. Constantine returned at midday. She heard his heavy footfalls in the corridor before he knocked, recognized his scent beneath the smell of smoke and blood. She opened the door to find him hollowed out, exhausted in body and spirit. Tell me, she said. The villages were destroyed. We found survivors, perhaps 30 total from all 3 settlements. The rogues were organized, brutal. They hit fast and retreated before we could engage them properly. Did you? She could not finish the question. I do not know who survived from River's Bend specifically. The refugees are being brought to the castle for treatment and shelter. You can look for your people when they arrive. Relief and dread warred in her chest. Maybe they had survived. Maybe they were among the 30. Maybe she would not have to carry more grief. Constantine's hand lifted, cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted his blood-stained appearance. "I am sorry, Beatrix. I should have seen this coming. Should have reinforced those borders. You cannot predict everything. I am Alpha King. Protecting my people is precisely what I should do." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the touch sending shivers down her spine. "You were one of those people once. I should have protected them better. They were standing too close." His scent wrapped around her, wild and desperate beneath the exhaustion. Beatrix could hear his heartbeat, could see his pupils dilate as something primal flickered across his features. "Constantine," she whispered, warning and plea combined. He leaned closer. His free hand slid to the nape of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. She felt the ghost of his breath against her throat, felt his lips brush her skin with barely restrained hunger. This was wrong. This was impossible. This was everything she wanted and could never have. His teeth grazed her pulse point, and Beatrix's entire world narrowed to that single sensation. He was going to mark her. Right here, right now. Consequences be damned. And she wanted it with desperate, aching need that obliterated every rational thought. Then Constantine jerked back as if burned, his expression horror-stricken. "I cannot. Gods. Beatrix, I almost—" He stumbled away from her, pressing his back against the opposite wall. "I should not be here. This is not— You deserve better than this. Constantine, please." "No." The word came out harsh. "You deserve someone who can claim you properly. Someone who is not bound by politics and duty and the expectations of an entire kingdom. You deserve more than stolen moments and secret longing. You deserve everything, and I cannot give you that." He fled before she could form a response, leaving her alone with her racing heart and the phantom sensation of his teeth against her throat. Chapter 4. Moonlit Confessions. The refugees arrived in scattered groups over the next 2 days. Beatrix searched every haggard face, her heart sinking with each unfamiliar one. On the 3rd day, she found them. Maren, Willem, and Cora, all alive though bearing the marks of trauma. Relief hit her so hard she nearly collapsed. "Child," Maren whispered, pulling Beatrix into a fierce embrace. "We thought you were there, thought you had been killed. I was here. I am so sorry I was not there to help. You could have done nothing," Cora said quietly. Her healing hands were bandaged, burns marking her arms from pulling victims from burning buildings. They came too fast, too organized. This was not random violence. Willem nodded agreement, his usually cheerful face grim. They knew exactly where to strike, which houses held families, which held supplies. Someone told them our layout. The implication settled heavy in Beatrix's gut. This had been planned, coordinated. But by whom, and why target border villages specifically? She ensured her friends received proper quarters and medical attention, then went to find Constantine. He was in his study with Godwin and several advisors, maps spread across the massive oak table. "Your Majesty, might I have a moment?" Constantine looked up, and something flickered in his eyes when he saw her. "Gentlemen, we will continue this later." The advisors filed out. Godwin lingered, his gaze sharp and assessing. "Miss Beatrix, how fortunate that you were not in your village when the attack occurred." "Fortunate indeed, counselor. Some might say suspiciously fortunate." "Godwin." Constantine's voice carried warning. "Do you have something to say?" "Only that the timing seems remarkable, Your Majesty. Miss Beatrix arrives at court, and suddenly rogues attack her home village with unprecedented coordination. One wonders if she might have inadvertently led them here." Beatrix went cold. "You think I brought this on my people?" "I think nothing without evidence," Godwin replied smoothly. "But evidence should be gathered, should it not, Your Majesty?" Constantine's jaw tightened. "Begin your investigation, counselor. But tread carefully. I will not tolerate baseless accusations." Over the following week, Godwin's investigation became increasingly intrusive. He questioned Beatrix repeatedly about her movements before arriving at court, about anyone who might have followed her, about whether she had contact with rogues. She answered everything honestly, but his suspicion never wavered. Then evidence emerged. A letter, supposedly written by Beatrix to an unknown contact in the rogue camps, discussing castle defenses and optimal times for attacks on border villages. The handwriting was close to hers, but not quite right. The paper was wrong, too fine for anything she could afford. But Godwin presented it to Constantine with triumphant certainty. "The evidence speaks clearly, Your Majesty. She has been feeding information to our enemies." Beatrix stood before Constantine's desk, her heart hammering. "That is not my letter. I would never betray the kingdom." "Nevertheless," Constantine said, his voice carefully neutral, "until this matter is resolved, you will be confined to your quarters. Someone else will care for Eloan temporarily." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You believe him?" "I believe in thorough investigation." His eyes met hers, and she saw conflict there, but also resolve. "If you are innocent, the truth will emerge. And if the truth is being manipulated, then we will discover that as well." She was escorted to her chambers by guards who would not meet her eyes. The door locked behind her with finality that made her throat tight. Without Beatrix, Eloan regressed dramatically. She refused to eat, refused to leave her chambers, refused to engage with the temporary tutor assigned to her. She signed only one thing repeatedly: "Where is Beatrix?" Constantine came to Beatrix's door on the fourth night, dismissed the guards, and entered without knocking. He looked haggard, his usual composure cracking at the edges. "Eloan is asking for you." "Then let me go to her." "I cannot. Not until this investigation concludes." "Your investigation is a farce." Beatrix stood, anger giving her courage. "Godwin has hated me from the moment I arrived. He manufactured that evidence, and you know it." "I know nothing for certain." "You know me." She crossed to him, close enough to smell his scent, wild and desperate. "You know I would never harm this kingdom or your daughter." His control wavered. She saw it in the way his hands clenched, the way his breathing changed. "What I know is that you are dangerous to me in ways that have nothing to do with rogues or politics." "Then why deny it?" "Because you are Omega. Because I am king. Because the entire kingdom would revolt if I claimed you as mate." The word hung between them. Finally spoken aloud. Mate. The bond she had felt since the beginning. The connection that pulled her toward him despite every rational objection. "I never asked you to claim me," Beatrix said quietly. "I never asked for a crown or a title. But do not pretend this is about politics, Constantine. You are afraid." His eyes flashed gold. "Careful. Afraid that what you feel for me is more powerful than your duty. Afraid that admitting it makes you weak. You would rather hide behind impossible excuses than risk being vulnerable." He moved so fast she barely tracked it, backing her against the wall with his body. His hands bracketed her head, caging her in, and his scent turned dark with want. "You think I am afraid?" His voice was gravel, barely controlled. "I am terrified. Terrified that if I claim you, I will never let you go. Terrified that my need for you will overshadow everything else. Terrified that you deserve better than a king who cannot give you everything you are owed. I want you," she whispered. "Not a king, not a title, just you." His forehead dropped to hers, breath mingling. "Beatrix, claim me or release me, but stop this torture of hovering between." The moon rose outside her window, full and bright, calling to every wolf in the kingdom. Constantine's control shattered visibly. His lips found hers in a kiss that was more claiming than question, demanding and desperate. Beatrix responded with equal hunger, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. His teeth grazed her throat, finding the spot where her pulse hammered wildly. One bite and she would be his, irrevocably bound. She tilted her head, offering, wanting it despite the consequences. Then he wrenched away, putting the width of the room between them. His chest heaved, eyes wild and gold-rimmed. "I cannot. Gods help me, I cannot do this to you. You deserve someone who can claim you openly, who can give you the honor you are owed. I am too selfish, too bound by duty. You should hate me for wanting you this much while refusing to have you properly. Constantine, please. No." The word was final. "I will prove your innocence. Tomorrow, I will announce it publicly and ensure Godwin never threatens you again. But this," he gestured between them, "this cannot happen. For your sake more than mine." He left her alone with her racing heart, and the taste of him still on her lips. Dawn brought vindication. Tavish, the captain of the guard, had apparently been investigating independently. He presented Constantine with evidence of discrepancies in Godwin's case, proof that the letter had been forged, witnesses who contradicted key elements of the accusation. Constantine called a court assembly. Every noble in the castle attended, sensing drama. He stood before them all, radiating authority, and announced Beatrix's complete innocence. Godwin was forced to publicly apologize, his face mottled with barely suppressed rage. Furthermore, Constantine continued, his gaze finding Beatrix in the crowd, anyone who questions Miss Beatrix's loyalty or position in this household will answer to me personally. She has my complete trust and protection. The declaration was unmistakable. He might not claim her as mate, but he was marking her as under his protection nonetheless. It was not what she wanted, but it was something. Lady Verity and her delegation departed that afternoon without ceremony, their political alliance proposal quietly withdrawn. Apparently, Constantine's obvious devotion to an Omega companion made him unsuitable for their family's ambitions. Beatrix stood with Elowen watching the carriages leave, the girl's small hand clasped firmly in hers. "Are you staying?" Elowen signed. "Yes." Beatrix signed back. Always. It was a promise she intended to keep, regardless of what Constantine decided about their impossible connection. Chapter 5. Blood and Bonds. Tavish found Constantine in the weapons room, where the king often went when he needed to think. The captain of the guard carried himself with unusual tension, his scent sharp with urgency. "Your Majesty, we need to speak." Privately. Constantine dismissed the two guards sharpening swords in the corner. Once they were alone, Tavish pulled out a leather journal, its pages filled with notes and observations. "I have been investigating the rogue attacks independently," Tavish began without preamble. The coordination, the timing, everything pointed to inside help. "I finally found the connection. Godwin has been in contact with Alpha Hrothgar of the Northern Reach for months. They are planning a coup." Constantine's hand stilled on the sword he had been examining. "Explain." "Hrothgar wants the throne. Godwin wants revenge for every slight he believes you have dealt him over the years. They plan to poison you during the next council meeting, make it look natural. Once you are dead, Hrothgar will claim regency over Elowen until she comes of age. Of course, accidents happen to children all the time." Rage flooded Constantine's system, his wolf rising dangerously close to the surface. "You are certain?" "I have witnesses, servants who overheard conversations. A merchant who delivered strange herbs to Godwin's chambers. But, Your Majesty, I do not know how deep this goes. I cannot be sure who else on the council might be involved." Constantine's mind raced through possibilities. If he arrested Godwin now, any other conspirators would scatter. Better to let them think they had succeeded, catch them all at once. "We will spring their trap," he decided. "Let them believe they have won, then crush them completely. That is dangerous, Your Majesty. If anything goes wrong, then I trust you to protect Elowen." Constantine met his captain's eyes. "I need to discuss this with someone who understands the court dynamics better than either of us. Someone who has been watching from the outside." "Miss Beatrix?" "Yes." Tavish's expression shifted to something approving. "She is clever, that one. And loyal. The servants speak well of her, which tells me more than any investigation could." Constantine found Beatrix in the library with Elowen, both absorbed in a book about ancient wolves and their magic. His daughter looked up when he entered, her face brightening. "Father, Beatrix says the old wolves could speak mind to mind even in human form. Is that true?" "Some could." Constantine signed back, his skills having improved considerably over the months. "But the gift is rare now." Elowen returned to her book, satisfied. Constantine caught Beatrix's eye and tilted his head toward the door. She understood immediately, making an excuse to Elowen about needing to discuss lesson plans. They walked to his private study in silence, charged with unspoken tension. Once inside, Constantine locked the door and released a long breath. "There is a plot to kill me and seize the throne through Elowen." Beatrix went pale, but her voice remained steady. "Tell me everything." He did. She listened without interruption, her sharp mind clearly working through implications. When he finished, She began pacing, hands moving restlessly. "Godwin will present the poison as a gift," she said. "Something celebratory to avoid suspicion. Wine, most likely, since that is traditional for council toasts. He will want you to drink it publicly so there are witnesses to your sudden illness." "Agreed. You will need an antidote ready, in case any actually enters your system. Cora, the healer from my village, she knows poisons. She can prepare something." Constantine nodded, impressed. "What else?" "Hrothgar will have men positioned throughout the castle. He cannot take the throne through poison alone. He needs visible strength. Expect his soldiers to move the moment you collapse. Tavish should have our own forces ready to counter. You have a tactical mind." She smiled without humor. "I have spent my life watching power games from below. You learn to see the patterns." They spent the next hour planning, Beatrix offering insights Constantine would never have considered. She knew which servants were loyal, which corridors provided the best ambush points, how to position Elowen safely while keeping her within sight. Finally, as the sun began setting, casting the study in orange and shadow, Constantine crossed to where Beatrix stood by the window. He caught her hand, pulling her around to face him. "I need you to know something before this happens." "Constantine." "No, let me say this." His other hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I feel the mate bond between us. I have felt it since the moment you signed to Elowen at the festival. I have been fighting it, telling myself it was impossible, that duty demanded I choose someone more suitable." Beatrix's eyes glistened. "And now? Now I realize I have been a coward. You are my mate, Beatrix. Not because of hierarchy or politics or anything the kingdom might demand. Because my soul recognizes yours. Because my wolf claims yours. Because I am more myself with you than I have ever been with anyone else. I knew," she whispered. "From the beginning I knew. Your scent called to me. The bond pulled at me. I was just waiting for you to accept what I already understood." He kissed her then, properly, without the restraint that had marked every interaction before. Her lips parted under his, yielding and demanding simultaneously. She tasted of hope and defiance, of everything he had denied himself. His hands slid into her hair, scattering pins until dark waves tumbled free. Beatrix made a small sound that went straight through him, her fingers clutching his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Constantine rested his forehead against hers. "After this is over, I will claim you before the entire kingdom. I do not care who objects." "Help me protect Elowen first," Beatrix replied. "Then claim me however you wish." The day of the council meeting arrived with deceptive normalcy. Constantine dressed in his formal robes, appearing every inch the confident king. Beatrix ensured Elowen was positioned in the observation gallery above the council chamber, where she could see her father but remain protected behind reinforced glass and 2 trusted guards. The counselors assembled, 13 men representing the kingdom's most powerful packs. Godwin entered last, carrying an ornate bottle of wine with exaggerated care. "Your Majesty, I took the liberty of acquiring this vintage to celebrate our recent victories against the rogue threat. Perhaps we might toast to continued prosperity?" Constantine smiled. "An excellent suggestion, Counselor." Godwin poured carefully, ensuring Constantine received the fullest glass. The king raised it high, making a show of admiring the deep red color. Around the table, counselors raised their own glasses. "To the kingdom," Constantine declared. "To the kingdom," they echoed. He brought the glass to his lips, tilted it back, but instead of swallowing, he let the wine pool in his mouth before discreetly spitting it back into the glass, while pretending to cough. The move was subtle, practiced. Only Godwin watched closely enough to notice Constantine had barely consumed anything. Minutes passed. Constantine kept his breathing even, his posture strong. Godwin's expression shifted from anticipation to confusion to alarm. "Your Majesty, are you feeling well? You look somewhat flushed." "I feel perfectly fine, Godwin." "Why do you ask?" Before Godwin could answer, the chamber doors burst open. Alpha Hrothgar entered with a dozen armed wolves, their weapons drawn. He was a massive man, scarred and brutal-looking, with eyes that promised violence. "Forgive the interruption." Hrothgar said, not sounding sorry at all. But I am here to claim what should have been mine years ago. Constantine stood slowly. And what might that be? The throne. You were always weak, Constantine. Too soft, too concerned with peace when strength is what our people need. With you dead, and your daughter under my protection, I will restore this kingdom to its proper glory. Interesting plan. One problem, though. Constantine's smile turned predatory. I am not dead. Hrothgar's eyes widened as Tavish and 20 castle guards emerged from concealed positions, surrounding the traitors completely. The loyal counselors scrambled back, shock evident on their faces. You knew, Godwyn breathed. Of course I knew. Did you truly believe I would not notice my own counselor plotting against me? Constantine's voice dropped to a growl. You have one chance to surrender. Hrothgar snarled, his body beginning to shift. I will take what I want by force. The transformation rippled through him, bones cracking and reforming until a massive gray wolf stood where the man had been. His soldiers shifted as well, the chamber filling with snarling beasts. Constantine shifted in response, his own wolf larger and darker than any present. The battle exploded into chaos. Above in the gallery, Eowyn pressed against the glass, her small hands flat against the barrier. Beatrix held her shoulders, trying to shield her from the worst of the violence below. Then Beatrix smelled him. Godwyn, moving through the servants' passages, heading toward the gallery. He was desperate, cornered, and he knew his only chance was leverage. Stay here, Beatrix signed to the guards. Protect her. She shifted into her wolf form, smaller than most but quick and determined. She positioned herself between Eowyn and the door just as Godwyn burst through. You! He snarled, still in human form. This is your fault. If you had never come here, none of this would have happened. You chose betrayal, Beatrix signed, though he could not understand. She growled instead, the message clear. Godwyn lunged for Eowyn. Beatrix intercepted him, teeth sinking into his arm. He screamed, trying to shake her off, but she held firm. They crashed into furniture, Godwyn trying desperately to reach the princess while Beatrix defended with everything she had. His fist connected with her ribs, pain exploding through her side. But she did not let go. Could not let go. Eowyn was signing frantically, trying to help, but Beatrix needed her to stay back. Tavish burst into the room, taking in the scene instantly. He grabbed Godwyn from behind, wrenching him away. Beatrix released her hold, stumbling back, tasting blood. Chain him, Tavish ordered his men. His Majesty will deal with him personally. Below, the battle had ended. Constantine stood over Hrothgar's broken body, his wolf form streaked with blood but victorious. The traitor wolves were either dead or surrendering, those counselors who had remained loyal stepping forward to affirm their allegiance. Constantine shifted back to human form, accepting a robe from Tavish. His eyes immediately sought the gallery, finding Beatrix's wolf form. Even from this distance, he could see she was injured. He ran. By the time he reached the gallery, Beatrix had shifted back, clutching her ribs. Eowyn knelt beside her, small hands moving frantically. Mama hurt. Help Mama. The word stopped Constantine in his tracks. Mama, Eowyn had spoken. Her first word, given not to him but to the woman who had shown her nothing but love and patience. Then Eowyn spoke again, her voice rough and uncertain but unmistakable. Mama. Beatrix's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Eowyn close despite her injuries, pressing a kiss to blonde hair. I am all right, little one. I am all right. Constantine knelt beside them, gathering both into his arms. His mate and his daughter, the two people who mattered more than any throne or kingdom. They were safe. Everything else could wait. Chapter 6. Crown and Claiming. 3 weeks had passed since the battle that nearly destroyed everything. The castle bore witness to transformation. Wounds both literal and political, slowly healing under careful attention. Godwyn sat in exile, stripped of title and land, his name spoken only as warning. Hrothgar's death had sent ripples through the northern reach. But his successor, a younger cousin with more pragmatism than ambition, sent emissaries bearing formal apologies and renewed pledges of loyalty. Beatrix's ribs healed under Cora's skilled care, the bruises fading from purple to yellow to nothing. Through it all, Constantine remained close, his presence a constant reassurance that sent her wolf purring with contentment. He made no secret of his devotion anymore, and the castle buzzed with speculation about when, not if, he would make his claim official. Elowyn's transformation proved even more remarkable than physical healing. The girl who had spoken her first word during crisis now spoke freely, her voice gaining strength and confidence daily. She still preferred signing, the language feeling more natural to her fingers than her tongue, but she no longer lived trapped in silence. On the morning of the council meeting that would determine their future, Elowyn climbed into Beatrix's bed before dawn, small hands finding hers in the darkness. "Are you scared?" the girl asked, her voice sleep-rough but clear. "Terrified," Beatrix admitted honestly. "Father says brave people feel fear, but act anyway." Elowyn snuggled closer. "You are the bravest person I know, Mama." That word still made Beatrix's chest ache with overwhelming emotion. She had not asked for it, had never presumed to claim such a title. But Elowyn had given it freely and repeated it constantly, as if making up for years of silence with declarations of love. "You make me brave." Beatrix signed and whispered simultaneously, a habit they had both adopted. "You and your father, both." The council chamber filled early, every regional alpha in attendance along with their primary advisors. The air thrummed with tension and curiosity. Some faces showed open hostility, others guarded neutrality, but a few, particularly the younger alphas and several betas who had witnessed the battle firsthand, displayed something close to respect. Constantine entered last, and the room fell silent. He wore formal robes of deep midnight blue embroidered with silver wolves, his crown a simple circlet of dark metal that somehow made him look more powerful rather than less. His gaze swept the assembly, measuring, assessing, then found Beatrix standing in the observation gallery beside Tavish and Elowyn. The connection between them sparked visible even across the distance, undeniable and raw. "Honored alphas, esteemed council members," Constantine began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the stone chamber. 3 weeks ago, traitors attempted to destroy this kingdom from within. They failed because loyal wolves stood firm. Today, I ask you to be equally steadfast as we face not external enemies, but internal prejudices that have weakened us for generations. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several alphas exchanged meaningful glances. "I intend to take a maiden queen," Constantine continued, "as is my right and responsibility to this kingdom. That mate is Beatrix, formerly of the River's Bend Pack, currently guardian and tutor to Princess Elowyn." The explosion of voices was immediate and predictable. Several alphas surged to their feet, protest written across their faces. "She is Omega. This is madness, Your Majesty. The kingdom requires strength at the throne." "What message does this send to our enemies? That we value nothing but sentiment over strategic alliance?" Constantine let them shout themselves hoarse, his expression never changing. When the noise finally subsided, he spoke with deadly calm. "Are you finished? Because I have things to say, and I would prefer not to waste time repeating myself over your bleeding." The insult landed hard. Several alphas bristled, but none dared interrupt again. "You speak of strength as if it is measured solely by hierarchy rank. How many of you stood against Hrothgar when he invaded this chamber? How many raised weapons to defend my daughter when Godwyn threatened her?" Constantine's gaze swept the room, and several wolves had the grace to look ashamed. Beatrix did. An Omega without formal combat training positioned herself between a child and a traitor, fought until she bled, and won. That is strength. If you cannot recognize it, the failing is yours, not hers. "But Your Majesty," one of the older alphas ventured, his tone more respectful, "there is precedent to consider. We have never had an Omega Queen. The other kingdoms will view it as weakness, will see opportunity to test us." "Let them try," Constantine said flatly. "Any kingdom foolish enough to test our borders will discover exactly how strong we are. Or have you all forgotten that Beatrix also mediated the dispute between Redwood and Ironwood packs? That her diplomatic solution saved us from internal conflict? Strength comes in many forms. Only the foolish ignore that truth. Movement in the gallery drew attention. Elowen descended the stairs, her small figure commanding attention despite her size. She reached the center of the council floor and turned in a slow circle, making sure every alpha could see her clearly. Then she spoke, her voice carrying with surprising power. "Why should Mama not be queen? She saved me. She taught me to speak. She loves this kingdom more than people who were born here." The chamber went absolutely silent. The miracle of the voiceless princess speaking in defense of her chosen mother was not lost on anyone present. "Are you afraid because she is Omega?" Elowen continued, signing as she spoke. "Or because she is better than you expect? Because she does not need rank to have power?" Direct hit. Several alphas looked genuinely struck by the accusation. Tavish stepped forward from his position, drawing all eyes. He knelt on one knee, fist over heart. "My blade is hers, as it is my king's. I saw her courage. I witnessed her wisdom. If Constantine Shadowmere claims her as mate and queen, then I acknowledge her right to both titles." One by one, the warriors who had fought alongside them in the battle followed Tavish's lead. 10 guards, then 15, then 20, all kneeling in formal pledge. The gesture carried weight that speeches could not match. A beta counselor stood slowly, his weathered face thoughtful. In the oldest records, before pacts grew large and hierarchy became rigid, Omegas served as advisors and mediators. They were valued for different strengths than combat prowess. We have forgotten much in our pursuit of martial power alone. Ancient history proves nothing about current need. Another alpha protested, though his conviction sounded shaken. "No," Constantine agreed, "but current action does. I am not asking permission. I am informing you of my decision. Beatrix is my mate, chosen by fate and claimed by choice. Whether you acknowledge her as your queen is your decision, but know this: any who raise voice or weapon against her raises them against me. Choose your path carefully." The threat hung heavy in the air. Several alphas shifted uncomfortably, weighing ambition against survival instinct. Finally, the eldest alpha in the chamber, a grizzled veteran who had served Constantine's father, rose with deliberate slowness. "I remember when your father took the throne, boy. Everyone said he was too young, too impulsive, too different from tradition. He proved them wrong by being exactly what the kingdom needed. Perhaps you inherited more than his crown." He lowered his head in formal acknowledgement. "I accept your mate as Luna. May she rule with wisdom, and may those foolish enough to oppose her find only failure." It broke the deadlock. Not everyone acquiesced immediately, but enough voices joined the elders that opposition became untenable. By the time the council session ended, Constantine's claim stood unchallenged, if not universally celebrated. That evening, in the privacy of his chambers, Constantine finally allowed his control to slip. He pulled Beatrix into his arms with shaking hands, burying his face in her hair. "I would have abdicated," he whispered. "If they had refused to accept you, I would have walked away from the throne." "No, you would not have," Beatrix replied gently. "You love this kingdom too much, and I would never ask that sacrifice. It would not be sacrifice. It would be choosing what matters most." He pulled back just far enough to cup her face in his palms. "Tomorrow night, under the full moon, I will claim you before the gods in the kingdom. No more waiting, no more doubt." "Yes," Beatrix breathed. "Claim me. Make me yours in every way." His eyes flashed gold, control fraying at the edges. "You have been mine since the moment you signed to my daughter. I was just too stubborn to admit what my soul already knew." Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of promise and possession, of battles won and futures claimed. Outside, the moon began its rise, full and bright, calling to every wolf in the kingdom. By tomorrow night, that call would bind two souls together in a bond that death itself could not break. For now, they had this moment, this room, this perfect certainty that they had found home in each other's arms. Chapter 7. Under Silver Light. The preparations for the bonding ceremony consumed the castle in controlled chaos. Servants rushed through corridors carrying armfuls of white mountain flowers and silver silk. Cooks prepared the ritual feast that would feed hundreds of guests. In the throne room, workers constructed the ceremonial platform where Constantine and Beatrix would stand beneath the full moon, visible through the massive skylight designed specifically for such occasions. Beatrix stood in her chambers, while 3 seamstresses fitted her ceremonial gown, a creation of flowing silver fabric that seemed to capture moonlight itself. The design was traditional, marking her as Luna and Queen, but modified to include delicate embroidery along the sleeves. Elowen had insisted on adding the embroidery herself. Small flowers and wolves worked in silver thread by determined 6-year-old hands. "You look beautiful, Mama," Elowen signed, perched on the window seat where she had been watching for the past hour. Her voice followed, still soft, but growing stronger. "Like starlight. You are biased?" Beatrix signed back with a smile. "I am honest." Elowen hopped down and crossed to her, small hands smoothing imaginary wrinkles from the gown. "Father will cry when he sees you. Your father does not cry. He did when I first said Mama. He will cry tonight too, but happy tears." Elowen's certainty was absolute and oddly touching. One of the seamstresses stepped back, surveying her work critically. "I believe we are finished, my lady. The fit is perfect. Thank you," Beatrix said softly. Being addressed as my lady still felt strange, though she supposed she should grow accustomed to it. After tonight, her title would be higher still. Queen, Luna, mate to the Alpha King. The weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. But Elowen's small hand slipping into hers provided grounding. This was real. This was happening. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Beatrix wanted it with desperate intensity. In his own chambers, Constantine was less calm. Tavish watched with barely concealed amusement as the king paced, his formal robes swirling with each sharp turn. "You are nervous," Tavish observed. "I have never seen you nervous before battle, but a bonding ceremony has you pacing holes in the stone. Battle, I understand. Battle has clear rules, clear outcomes. This," Constantine gestured helplessly. "What if I speak the ritual words incorrectly? What if the bond does not take properly? What if you stop overthinking and simply let yourself feel what you already know?" Tavish interrupted gently. "The bond exists already. Tonight merely formalizes what the fates decided long ago. Trust in that." Constantine stopped pacing, releasing a long breath. "She deserves perfection. She deserves a ceremony without flaw, a mate who can give her everything. She deserves you. Exactly as you are. Flaws, doubts, fierce protectiveness, and all." Tavish stood, clasping his king's shoulder. "Besides, even if you stumble over every word, she will understand what you mean. That is what mates do." The full moon rose precisely at dusk, huge and silver white, dominating the darkening sky. The throne room filled with witnesses, every alpha in the kingdom present along with their mates and heirs. The galleries above held hundreds more. Common wolves and nobles alike come to witness history. Beatrix entered from the east corridor, escorted by Elowen, who signed enthusiastic encouragement every few steps. The crowd fell silent as she walked the length of the throne room, her silver gown catching the moonlight streaming through the skylight. She kept her chin high, her steps measured, refusing to show the fear churning in her stomach. Constantine waited on the ceremonial platform, and when their eyes met, everything else faded. His expression held wonder and possession in equal measure, his scent wrapping around her even from a distance. He wore formal robes of midnight blue embroidered with silver wolves, his crown replaced temporarily by a simple circlet of moonstone. She climbed the steps to join him, Elowen releasing her hand reluctantly before taking her place beside Tavish in the front row. The witnesses pressed close, forming a circle around the platform but maintaining respectful distance. The ritual elders stepped forward, an ancient female wolf whose authority transcended rank. She had performed bonding ceremonies for 3 generations of kings, her presence lending weight and legitimacy to the proceedings. "We gather under the full moon to witness the bonding of souls," she began, her voice surprisingly strong. Constantine Shadowmere, Alpha King of the Mountain Territories, and Beatrix of River's Bend, chosen mate and Luna. Let any who would challenge this union speak now." Silence stretched taut. Beatrix held her breath, half expecting someone to voice objection, despite the council's earlier acceptance. But the silence held, broken only by the wind whistling through the skylight. "Then we proceed." The elder turned to Constantine. "Speak your claim, Alpha King. Let all present witness your choice." Constantine took Beatrix's hands in his touch warm and grounding. His voice carried clear and strong through the chamber. "I claim Beatrix as my mate, chosen by fate and affirmed by will. She is my equal in all things, my partner in rule and life. I offer her my protection, my loyalty, my soul. What was mine becomes ours. What I am becomes ours. From this night until death and beyond, we are one." The traditional words, spoken for centuries, but his eyes held personal promise that went deeper than any ritual. Beatrix felt the mate bond flare between them, recognizing the claim and responding. "Speak your acceptance, Luna. Let all present witness your choice." Beatrix's voice shook slightly at first, but strengthened as she spoke. "I accept Constantine as my mate, chosen by fate and affirmed by will. He is my equal in all things, my partner in rule and life. I offer him my loyalty, my heart, my soul. What was mine becomes ours. What I am becomes ours. From this night until death and beyond, we are one." The bond sang between them, powerful and absolute. "Then by the authority granted me by the old gods and the pack laws, I recognize this bond." The elder lifted her hands skyward, calling to the moon. "Seal your claim, Alpha King. Mark your mate, that all may know she belongs to you as you belong to her." Constantine pulled Beatrix close, one hand cradling her neck, tilting her head to expose her throat. His eyes flashed gold, wolf rising to the surface. "Mine," he breathed. Then his teeth sank into her pulse point. The pain was sharp and immediate, but it transformed instantly into pleasure so intense, Beatrix gasped. The mate bond completed with a snap she felt in her bones, in her blood, in her very soul. She clung to Constantine's shoulders as sensation overwhelmed her, their scents mingling until she could not tell where hers ended and his began. When he pulled back, blood marked his lips, but his expression held only reverence. "Forever mine, forever yours," Beatrix whispered. "Mark him in return," the elder instructed. "Let the bond be equal and whole." Beatrix shifted to her wolf form in a fluid movement, smaller than Constantine's wolf but no less determined. She reached up on hind legs, her teeth finding the same spot on his throat, marking him as he had marked her. The bond solidified completely, unbreakable and eternal. When she shifted back, Constantine caught her, supporting her trembling body. The witnesses erupted in howls, every wolf present voicing approval. The sound shook the castle walls, echoing through the mountains, announcing to every pack in the territory that their king had claimed his mate. Elowen rushed forward, wrapping her arms around both of them. "You are family now. Really, truly family. We were always family," Beatrix signed, then said aloud for all to hear. "From the moment I met you, we were family." The feast that followed lasted deep into the night. Long tables groaned under the weight of food and drink, music filled the halls, and wolves in both forms celebrated with abandon. Beatrix found herself surrounded by well-wishers, some genuine, others clearly still uncertain, but unwilling to show open disrespect. She handled each interaction with grace, Constantine always at her side, his hand never leaving hers. The mark on her throat throbbed with pleasant awareness, a constant reminder of their bond. Near midnight, as the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Constantine leaned close to whisper in her ear, "I believe we have fulfilled our public duties. Shall we retire?" Heat flooded through Beatrix at the implication. Yes. They slipped away quietly, though not quietly enough to escape Elowen's knowing grin or Tavish's approving nod. The walk to Constantine's chambers seemed endless, anticipation building with each step. Once inside, Constantine locked the door with deliberate care. "You are my mate," he said wonderingly, crossing to her. My Luna. My queen. Mine in every way. Yours, Beatrix confirmed, reaching for him. Show me what that means. He did, with hands and lips and whispered promises, claiming her completely as moonlight poured through the windows, and their bond pulsed with shared pleasure. They learned each other thoroughly, taking time to discover what made the other gasp and shudder. When they finally joined, the bond flared so bright, Beatrix thought she might shatter from it. Afterwards, wrapped in each other's arms, Constantine traced the mark on her throat with gentle fingers. I should have claimed you months ago. We needed to walk this path at our own pace. Beatrix pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. We are here now. That is what matters. Here, and never letting go. He pulled her closer, possessive even in tenderness. Sleep, my Luna. Tomorrow we begin our reign together. Beatrix drifted off with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, the mate bond humming contentment, and the certain knowledge that she had finally, truly, found home. Chapter 8. Legacy of Light. Almost 2 years had passed since the bonding ceremony under the full moon. The kingdom had transformed in ways both subtle and profound, blooming under the joint rule of Constantine and Beatrix, like flowers after winter snow. Beatrix stood at the window of her private chambers, one hand resting on her swollen belly as she watched the sun rise over the mountains. 4 months pregnant with twins, if Cora's predictions proved correct. The pregnancy had been unexpected, a gift neither she nor Constantine had dared hope for, given her Omega status and the rarity of such unions producing heirs. You should be resting, Constantine said from the doorway, his voice warm with affection and concern. He crossed the room to stand behind her, his arms wrapping carefully around her expanding waist, hands settling over hers on their growing children. I have rested all night. Now I want to watch the sunrise. She leaned back against his solid warmth. Besides, I can feel them stirring. They like the morning light. They will be strong, Constantine murmured, his lips brushing her temple. Like their mother, and stubborn like their father. That too. Movement at the door drew their attention. Elowen appeared, now 7 years old, and looking far more grown than seemed possible. Her blonde hair hung loose down her back, and her blue eyes sparkled with excitement. Mama, Papa, can we go to the village today? You promised to show me the new school. The school had been Beatrix's project from the beginning. Moira's Haven, the reconstructed village built on the ruins of River's Bend, now housed the kingdom's first school for children with special needs. Deaf children, blind children, those who could not shift or struggled with learning, all found welcome there. Teachers trained in signing and other communication methods ensured no child lived trapped in isolation as Elowen once had. We can go this afternoon. Beatrix signed and spoke simultaneously, a habit they had all maintained. I have council meetings this morning. Elowen made a face at the mention of council meetings but nodded acceptance. Her speech had developed remarkably over the past 2 years, though she still preferred signing for complex thoughts or strong emotions. Can I help teach the little ones their signs while you meet? I think they would love that. Beatrix smiled as Elowen bounced with enthusiasm. Ask Tavish to assign you an escort. The girl darted away, already signing instructions to herself about what lessons she would teach. Constantine watched her go with paternal pride softening his features. She is going to be a formidable woman, he observed. She already is. The council meeting that morning proved less contentious than those in early months of Beatrix's reign. The Alphas had learned, some more quickly than others, that their new Luna possessed political instincts sharp as any blade. Her suggestions regarding trade routes had increased prosperity across all territories. Her mediation between feuding pacts had prevented 3 potential conflicts. Most importantly, her insistence on merit-based advancement had strengthened the kingdom by allowing capable wolves to rise regardless of birth rank. There remained pockets of resistance, of course. Some older alphas clung to traditional hierarchies with grim determination. But their voices grew fewer and quieter, as results spoke louder than prejudice. Today's meeting addressed requests from several packs seeking to establish their own schools, modeled after Moira's Haven. Beatrix listened to each proposal carefully, asking questions about resources and teacher training, suggesting modifications that would increase effectiveness. The Northern Reach requests assistance establishing a school for combat training that includes wolves of all ranks, one counselor reported. They specifically request that Omega wolves be allowed to learn defensive techniques. Several older alphas shifted uncomfortably. The idea of Omegas receiving combat training still made some nervous, as if teaching self-defense somehow threatened the natural order. An excellent proposal, Beatrix said firmly. Omega wolves should absolutely learn to defend themselves and their families. We will provide funding and send experienced trainers to assist their establishment. My Luna, one alpha ventured carefully. Some worry that training Omegas in combat might encourage them to challenge authority. If your authority requires keeping others helpless to maintain itself, perhaps that authority deserves challenge. Beatrix's tone remained pleasant, but her meaning was unmistakable. We have proven that strength comes in many forms. Let us continue proving it. The alpha subsided, chastened. Constantine, seated beside her on matching thrones they had commissioned specifically to show their equal status, caught her eye with warm approval. After the meeting concluded, they traveled to Moira's haven with Elowen and a small escort. The village had been rebuilt with care, each structure designed with accessibility in mind. Wide streets accommodated those using mobility aids. Visual markers helped guide those with limited sight. And everywhere, wolves moved with easy comfort, signing as naturally as speaking. Marin met them at the village entrance, the elderly woman now serving as the school's administrator. She had taken to the role with unexpected enthusiasm, her years of quiet observation making her perfectly suited to understanding each child's unique needs. My Luna, Your Majesty. She bowed formally, but her eyes danced with affection. Elowen, the children have been asking for you all week. I brought new stories to share, Elowen announced proudly, holding up a leather-bound book she had insisted on carrying herself. And Mama helped me create new signs for complicated feelings. Wonderful. Come. They are gathering in the main hall. Willem appeared from the bakery he now operated, his shy smile replaced by confident pride. He had trained 3 apprentices already, passing on skills while building a thriving business. Fresh bread for your majesties, and honey cakes, because I know someone who cannot resist them. Constantine accepted the basket with genuine gratitude. Your cakes remain the finest in the kingdom, Willem. Cora emerged from the healing house, her apprentices trailing behind, carrying supplies. She examined Beatrix with a healer's critical eye, noting posture and color and scent. You are well, she concluded. But tired. The twins grow strong and demand much energy. I feel them moving constantly, Beatrix admitted. They seem to have inherited their father's restlessness, or their mother's determination. Cora smiled. Come by later. I have a tea blend that will help with the fatigue. They spent the afternoon at the school, watching Elowen teach signing to children who had previously struggled to communicate. Beatrix felt tears prick her eyes as she witnessed a small boy sign his first complete sentence, his mother sobbing with joy beside him. This was what they had built together. Not just a kingdom with strong borders and profitable trade, but a place where every wolf had value regardless of rank or ability. A place where children like Elowen, like Moira, like Beatrix herself, would never again feel worthless or invisible. That evening, back at the castle, they gathered in the family chambers. Elowen sat cross-legged on the floor, reading aloud from her book, while Beatrix and Constantine reclined on the sofa, his hand resting protectively on her belly. The princess learned that true strength came not from magic or crowns, Elowen read carefully, but from the courage to be kind when the world demanded cruelty. Beatrix felt the twins shift beneath Constantine's palm, responding to Elowen's voice. He smiled, that rare, unguarded expression he reserved for these private moments. They recognize their sister's voice already, he murmured. Of course they do. She talks to them constantly. Beatrix covered his hand with hers. They will grow up knowing nothing but love and acceptance. We are giving them a different world than either of us knew. A better world. Later, after Elowen had fallen asleep and Constantine had carried her to bed, he returned to find Beatrix at the window again, watching moonlight paint the mountains silver. You are thinking about Moira, he said, reading her mood with mate bond accuracy. She would have loved this, would have loved seeing what her signs became, how many children they help now. Beatrix leaned into his embrace. I wish she could have met Elowin. They would have been such good friends. She is part of everything you built. Every child who learns to sign, every family who reconnects through communication. That is Moira's legacy as much as yours. And yours. You could have chosen a mate who brought political alliance and military strength. Instead, you chose me. I chose my mate. Fate chose you. I simply had sense enough to listen. He turned her to face him, hands cupping her face with infinite gentleness. You gave me back my daughter. You gave this kingdom justice and compassion. You gave me a family I never thought to have again. How could I possibly regret any choice that led me to you? The twins kicked sharply, making them both laugh. Constantine dropped to his knees, pressing kisses to Beatrix's swollen belly and signing greetings to the children within. Your father is ridiculous. Beatrix signed to the twins, though they could not yet see her hands. Your mother is perfect. Constantine signed back, rising to claim her lips in a kiss that still made her dizzy even after 2 years. Outside, snow began to fall, the first of winter drifting down to blanket the kingdom in white. Inside the castle, the royal family stood warm and safe, bound by love stronger than any political alliance, any tradition, any prejudice that had tried to keep them apart. The kingdom prospered under their rule. The Pax grew stronger through unity rather than hierarchy. And in the hearts of two people who had found each other against all odds, hope bloomed eternal, that they had built something lasting, something good, something that would endure long after they themselves had passed into memory. They were home. They were together. And that, more than crowns or kingdoms, was all that truly mattered. The end.